Good morning, Pete, North Las Vegas. This is my very first LR308 that I built, a little over a year ago now. Had some issues with it, which we'll talk about here in just a minute. But I recently installed this A5 buffer system that I got from heavybuffers.com. And I was happy enough with it that I'm going to install a second one on my second LR308 build. So the primary reason I went to the A5 setup on the first LR308 that I built was I was getting buffer tube damage using the standard M4 tube, 7-inch internal length, with the Aero Precision 3.8 ounce buffer. And since I went to the A5 system on this rifle, I no longer have any signs of buffer tube damage. And we'll get into a little bit more detail. Even though I mentioned this in some of the other videos, I'll kind of explain some of my theories as to why I'm not seeing this happen with the A5 setup. Okay, so I'm going to try to measure these springs at the same place. And this is the Aero Precision on the right. So you can see that the ID. And like I said, I'm going to try to grab the springs in the exact same place so the numbers are as close as I can get them. Okay, so this is the heavy buffer spring. And like I said, I'm trying to measure these exactly the same. And you can see the ID of the spring is a little bit smaller. So on the calipers, you can see the notched area on the jaws here. That allowed me to get past the first coil on both springs and just get the jaws to measure on the first coil. So that's about as close a measurement as I can get. And just based on the first active coil, you can see there's a difference in numbers. So here's the OD on the buffer for the Aero Precision. So here's the OD on the heavy buffers, and you can see it's quite a bit larger. So on the heavy buffers, you can see that his design gives you a lot more bearing surface here, a lot more support than the standard buffer design. And then the Aero Precision also has the side cuts. And I think these are just kind of help you to get over the retainer pin. That's the only reason they're there. But besides the shorter bearing surface and the cuts, I thought, well, let's just demonstrate that in a tube. Okay, now I'm not doing any trickery here. We're going to show this how it really is. If I take the heavy buffers and put it inside the tube, you can see I get a little bit of movement. But now let's compare that to the... Now you can see how much more movement you get. Okay, so the last thing we're going to mention is on the A5 setup, this is 8.5 ounces. On the Aero Precision carbine setup, this is 3.8 ounces. So everything we've just demonstrated between the heavy buffers A5 kit design and the Aero Precision, I believe that this all contributed to that bolt carrier group at 18.6 ounces is not being properly controlled. I think that this 3.8 ounces is just too light. Just the design, it's basically a standard M4, AR-15, M16 design, and all they did was shorten it up. And so I think that is primarily what was causing the buffer tube wear and not properly controlling the bolt carrier group. Now, the other benefit is, since I put this A5 on this rifle here, noticeable recoil reduction to where I can stay on target through the glass. The recoil is more straight back, whereas with the carbine setup, it was allowing the rifle to kind of jump up and then back. And so overall, you know, I think the A5 system is what solved the the buffer tube wear issue. Was it carrier tilt? Yes, I do believe that some of it was carrier tilt, but I believe a lot of this wear was this buffer being allowed to rock inside the tube and inside the spring. Okay, so this is disclaimer time on my video. What I'm about to say is, this is my beliefs on my rifles and my builds. You may have Aero Precision 3.8 ounce buffer and spring and a mil-spec tube that works on your rifle, and you're happy with it. Like I said, I have come to believe that this stuff is not properly designed for a 308, at least not on my builds. Like I said, I'm going to repeat that a couple times. This stuff did not work on my builds. I have no use for these springs anymore, and I have no use for these buffers. I could take the buffers apart and maybe salvage the bumper on the back and get the weights out of it. I'll never use this stuff again. This buffer tube is damaged, and these do not work on my rifles. Like I said, they might work on yours, but they don't work on mine, and I have no further use for them. In one of the other videos I did talking about the buffer tube damage that I originally had on the first rifle build, it was suggested that I used an enhanced buffer tube to where this part of the buffer tube comes out here. The problem is I'm using an offset retainer pin. So I need a flush edge to index that retainer pin and get it properly indexed because it's an offset. Yeah, I'll try to get a close up in here, but you can see how the tube actually has to index that retainer pin. On all the enhanced tubes that I've seen, there's a slot in here. Once they've extended the tube, they also put a slot in here, and that captures the sides of your retainer pin, so it still does a good job of capturing the retainer pin, but it won't keep the retainer pin from spinning, which is why I can't use the enhanced. So I just thought I'd mention that. All right, well, I'm going to go out in the garage, loosen this castle nut, and get this standard tube off of here and put the A5 tube on. Okay, so as I was saying in the last clip, the reason I cannot use an enhanced buffer tube is because I'm using an offset retainer pin. And if you take a look at the edge here of the step, that has to be captured by the bottom of the buffer tube. And that's what keeps your offset indexed properly so that you actually have an offset. All of the enhanced buffer tubes that I've seen, they have this slot drilled out, and it captures the side of the retainer pin, but it won't index it. So that's the reason why I can't use an enhanced buffer tube. And the reason I'm using in the offset is I had minimal clearance. It wasn't a problem, but I had minimal clearance between the back of the bolt carrier group pushing the buffer off of a mil-spec dimension retainer pin. So that's why I'm using the offset. Okay, the forward controls, A5, 7 3/4 inch buffer tube is installed with the heavy buffers, A5 XH 8.5 ounce buffer with a rifle length 308 spring, 13 3/4 inch long, 34 coils, about 74 thousandths wire gauge, which is going to turn this rifle into a nice smooth shooter. Okay, so what we have here is about 88. Gets into the gas port maybe about halfway. Probably a little bit of carbon buildup. So let's just call it 88. All right, this one's 92. So Might be able to guess what we're getting ready to do here. And I'll explain all the reasons why. Okay, so the original goal on building these 308s was to get them to shoot any type of ammunition, even poor, maybe even possibly underpowered ammunition, and get these things reliable in cold weather, and get these rifles as much as possible 100%. Okay, so what you're looking at is how I pulled this apart. You can see that there is no evidence of gas leaks on the journal. There's no evidence of gas leaks on the back of the tube here. There's no evidence of gas leaks on the front of the tube or around the plunger on this rifle speed. So therefore, I believe this rifle was giving full gas on the wide open setting, which was position 12. But using the Winchester so-called M80 load, I wasn't getting locked back on each and every round. Now, I know what you're thinking. Well, you stuck a heavier buffer in there. Yes, and I did that for more than one reason. And one of the main reasons for the A5 system is reduced recoil. So because this is 88, I'm going to punch it out another 4 thousandths. Everything I've read, everything I've come across says on an 18-inch barrel with about a 5-inch dwell length, running an 18.5 ounce BCG and a 5.5 ounce buffer, not the 8.5 that I'm using, they're running 96 thousandths. That seems to be the magical number. So I'm going to take this out to 92. And we'll kind of split the difference between where I'm at and not getting this hole too big. Now, if I end up with a little bit too much gas on the full open settings, like maybe 10 or 12, that's okay. I have plenty of adjustment left to turn the gas back down. So that's primarily the reason why. So what I forgot to mention in the last clip was I'm using the shortest plunger on this rifle speed. So if opening up this gas port, if I can't quite get it turned down, like say maybe I want to run a suppressor or something, and I can't quite get the gas turned all the way down to where I would like it, they sell longer plungers. So they go further in, giving you more ability to turn more gas down or more gas off. So yeah, I forgot to mention that. The other thing is Rifle Speed uses a straight gas tube. Brownells just did a recent build video where they showed using a Rifle Speed, and he put a bent gas tube in there, a gas tube with a bend, and you could just tell it was all jacked up. It wasn't right. Straight gas tubes on Rifle Speed. Quick note on these drill bits. I ordered them short so that less flex and less chance of them breaking off in the hole. These are specialized drill bits, and they are designed to drill through very hardened materials like S7 tool steel, real hard stainless. They have a double cutting tip, and the angle of the tip is a little bit different. And so like I said, these aren't your average store-bought drill bits. I did not get these from Home Depot or Lowe's. So if you're going to do this, you know, you might want to have a good quality drill bit. All right, let the drilling begin. And I know what some of you are thinking. You know, you're a hack. What a freaking backyard shade tree gunsmithing wannabe, because you're using a 12-volt battery. Nobody uses a 12-volt battery. Okay, cleaning rod. We don't want to damage the threads inside if we go too far. All right, let's unleash the Kraken. I'm going to be going slow back and forth just to make sure, you know, we don't get chips and reduce the risk of snapping this drill bit. All right, we're through. No drama. Okay, so this is 100 degrees. And I'm just gonna touch up the edge by hand and just kind of knock down the very slightly raised burr from drilling the hole. Then what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna come down inside with the borescope and see if there's any leftovers on the inside. And I'll just use the cleaning rod back and forth to knock any big chips off that are on the inside. And I'm not gonna show that. Yeah, I'll stick the borescope down there and show that too. Okay, I know it looks a little ugly right now, but those are just some very, very small leftovers. The borescope really exaggerates everything. What I'll do is I'll put a cleaning rod up and down there and very, very gently remove those off the edges. Okay, so what I'm doing is I'm taking a cleaning rod and the edge of it without a tip and just kind of coming in and getting the big stuff off. Those white streaks you see, that's grease. I am not scratching the barrel. All we're doing is removing the leftovers. And then what I'll do is I'll come in from the other direction and you'll just keep working them off until that hole is nice and smooth. It already looks better than when I got it from Wilson Combat. Okay, there you have it. After drilling and cleaning up the edges, that right there is just normal gas port erosion from firing the rifle. And if there's any little bit of tiny edge left there, first couple of rounds that come down through the barrel, it'll all be nice and smoothed out. So anyway, I'm pretty confident at this point that this rifle is going to be cold weather and poor ammo reliable. I'm not going to show the rest of putting this thing back together. It's just everything reverse order. Midwest Industries 40 foot-pounds, and the handguard screws are 40 inch-pounds. So let's get this thing put back together and we'll show the final results. All right, A5 installed. Gas port opened up 4 thousandths. I'm pretty sure, I'm hoping that all the tuning and efforts to get this thing to be 100% reliable are finally done. Anyway, we'll get this thing out to the range and see what it does.